Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Peak of Serenity podcast. This is episode number 77, and I am one of your hosts, emallson, and as always, I am joined by my co host, Anomoly.
Hello.
And today, well, there's been some news in WoW that we need to discuss, so we will be discussing that a little bit. But at the end of the day, it is not really our domain to be weighing in on. So it is not going to be the primary subject of our show today, but it would be, we both agree it would be incorrect for us to not bring it up, not address it. So we are going to do that, and then we're going to get into the rest of the show and talking about uh, how the raid's going, things like how insane the damage boost from the Shards of Domination sets is, because holy crap, all that
Yep.
fun stuff. But first, we have some less fun stuff that
Yeah.
we need to talk about.
Yeah. So it came out late this week that the state of California is essentially suing or brought a lawsuit against Blizzard Entertainment for what they're describing as like rampant um, sexual misconduct, discrimination against women, both from like a promotion perspective, just in general, like the teams they were on, just a lot of essentially like almost like misogynistic or just harassment type behaviors, mostly towards females who worked at Blizzard. And it's a really damning report, right? Like the
Yeah,
report itself.
the we talk about and hear about fairly regularly, things like the gender pay gap and promotion differences and like low key sexual harassment. This is not low key in any
No.
sense. So I don't think we want to talk like lots of details about the actual contents of the report. Uh, but know that if all you read is a headline, it's a whole lot worse.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing just to keep in mind here is this isn't a like individual stepping up or a person like an
No.
individual suing Blizzard. Like this is the state of California and it's coming off the back of a 2-year investigation. So there's a lot of meat behind this. A lot of like people were hurt and are still being hurt, I guess you could say. So it's not fun, right? It's not fun for people around the game. It's not fun for people who work at Blizzard. And I think the biggest issue, it's not fun for the victims, right? Or people who have been victims of this in the past to get to reopen those wounds. So
Yeah.
I, I think it's just a generally a very it's just a bad situation. And I think it gets worse. And sort of this will be like I think my main point is I think it gets worse because it is Blizzard, right? Like you look at Blizzard as sort of one of the last old guard type development studios that's still around in some form or fashion, right? A lot of
Yeah.
the original big games, the people that started certain genres like Westwood and Command and Conquer. I mean, Blizzard, of
That's
course, and
gone.
their
Yep.
RTS. You have Maxis and the Sim games, right? All those type of studios have sort of folded under and been bought up, and Blizzard has been sort of the last sort of remaining one there that sort of is that golden torch or that golden light. I don't know what you want to call it. And a lot of this stuff coming out, I think, hurts a little bit more from a community perspective because of the sort of the hey, it's Blizzard, they can do no wrong. And yeah, they've had a rough couple years, but it hasn't been too bad. And then you hear this stuff come out, and it's not that I mean Blizzard was bad for years, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah. And
this is no longer oh sorry.
I've seen a bunch of people, especially the people that didn't go and read the complaint, didn't go and read the details of it, only, read a summary from an article or just read a headline, heard about it on Reddit, one of those things. A lot of people speculating that this is like an Activision thing and Blizzard is like, just
Caught
guilty
up.
by connection to Activision. That's, if anything, it's the other way around. This is a
Yeah.
Blizzard problem, first and foremost.
Yeah.
And uh, from all of the, like, there's been a lot of activity on Twitter over the past several days from former developers, former and current developers, um, making clear that this is not solely a like Blizzard problem, because this kind of misogyny and sexual harassment is widespread in the game development industry. Um,
Yeah.
that doesn't excuse it, but it does mean that there are your love for Blizzard and their history isn't going to absolve them of the fact that Holy shit. They fucked up.
Well, I feel like it's not maybe they fucked up. It's just people are bad. People can make things that you enjoy and can still be
Yeah.
bad people,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
and I think that's sort of
Exactly.
the eye-opening part of this, right? And yeah, I mean, I think the responses, like, so if we take the responses, right, that have come out, particularly from corporate, like the chief compliance officer from Activision essentially dismissed the claims, said
Yeah, that was
the report
wild.
was factually incorrect, and she's been there for what, 4 months now on the job. So I think that's a poor response. I think a bunch of current employees, at least that I've seen, right, and follow on Twitter, have come out and said, hey, they don't like
Yeah.
her response doesn't speak for me, things like that,
Yeah.
which is good to hear. And
One
then
of
sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, and then you have like Jalen Brack's or Jab's response, right? Well, not even his response, his internal memo, which I thought was a little at least personally, was a little rough when, like, he brings up I had to unfortunately, I'll be completely honest, I had to Google the name he dropped, but apparently the person he dropped, he wrote something about, "Hey, the first meeting I had with Bobby," who's the CEO of
Oh, Bobby
Activision,
Kotick.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, was like, I'd let him know, "Hey, like, this is the name that's always been spoken at the Brack dinner table, and it's, like, the name of a prominent feminist from the '60s," and I'm just like, I
Yeah,
don't think
that's
that was a part
so
of your
hollow.
I don't think
Oh
that was a
my
part of your first
god.
conversation with Bobby, dude. Like, let's be honest with
No.
ourselves. Like, it's yeah. So I think
That's
the
pure
leadership,
PR bullshit.
yeah, the leadership response, I think, has been very poor from Blizzard. I think employees themselves and the accounts that they have, like the Twitter accounts that at least the social media postings that they're making, make it seem like number one, like they feel for this. They think it's a bad thing. They want to make a change. And I think that's sort of the good thing. I think the problem and might end up being that the management just sort of wants to put their head in the sand and try and get
Yeah.
over this, right?
And
Which
I think that's been based on everything that I've paid, everything that I've seen about this. That seems like it's been a long-standing thing. Um,
yeah,
Alex Afrasiabi is a major player on this lawsuit. Without getting into too many details, but lots of sexual harassment centered on him, and things like Chris Metzen, Tim as his successor when Metzen left Blizzard. You know, this is
right,
not something that's just new leadership. This isn't a J. Allen Brack problem. The problem goes back years and years and years. Prasiabi was with the company for 20 years, and we actually, I believe, on this podcast talked about his departure last year. He had a very quiet departure compared to
everyone
most
else.
other employees that were leaving the company, and now we know why.
Yeah,
this has
yeah,
been this has been this is not a new Blizzard problem or an old Blizzard problem. This is a Blizzard problem.
yeah, yeah. I don't think you can divorce the two there. So yeah, I mean, I think uh, at the end of the day, like my only piece would probably just be like, I hope that this enacts some sort of change from a management perspective at Blizzard because I think that's where they need it,
Yeah,
right? And I don't. And unfortunately, it sounds like just based on the report, like it almost requires a wholesale change, particularly in some like key departments, like I think HR being the big one, right? Being
yeah,
the fact that like I mean, I've been a part like so in my own experiences, right, working for a large company, I've been a part of complaints. Maybe not sexual harassment complaints, but like complaints where like you can't work with your manager or like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? And I've never been told the employee or like the details of who said it. I've always ever known the outcome or the changes that either I need to make or like somebody that is a
yeah.
part of my team needs to make,
That's
right?
a part of this complaint too that is really shitty. Like the that people were getting retaliated against
Right.
because the people they complained about to HR were hearing from HR not only that there was a complaint but also who was submitting the complaint, or
Right.
at least enough information to identify who submitted the complaint. Like,
Right. Which is just a
no.
poor HR form,
Yeah,
right? And yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I think to me, like, that's where this has to go is, like, there has to be some sort of change, like, wholesale change at the management level. I think underlying the individuals, like, people who work at a company follow the direction of your leaders, and, like, when your leaders, say and do things, like, there's, like, a complacency or you become maybe not complicit, but there's, like, an understanding, like, "Oh, this behavior, doing this is okay."
yeah,
Right, and I think
yeah,
that's where it starts. I think that's where it really needs to change.
yeah,
I don't know what this means in the future, right? Like they talked about, I think the other thing that they've said is that because a lot of the complaints centered around the WoW team, WoW development has essentially halted, right?
Yeah.
Temporarily.
So Jeff Hamilton, who we've talked about his tweets a couple times because he's a senior systems designer on WoW, and he has had some interesting takes, and I'll leave it
Yeah.
at that for right now. But he tweeted out this weekend, I think it was Friday or yesterday, that WoW development is essentially stopped right now. Um, he didn't give details as to whether this was like. My understanding is that it stopped because this is big deal and people need time to process it and support each other, and like by all means take your time. That is, I
Yeah.
think, correct for everyone involved, like to stop. Like the game is not as important as the people making the game, and they need to take their time and figure out where things go from here and what needs to
Yeah.
happen. um so but yeah, that means no development on the game right now. And there's a lot of people speculating that that's going to mean major delays down the line.
Yeah.
I don't think that matters. At the
No.
end of the day, people in WoW, in the WoW community, have such a weird relationship with patch timing, right? Where like on the one hand, if the patch takes too long, everybody's up in arms, and on the other hand, people talk about the old Blizzard that would like delay things until they were done and wouldn't release
Yeah.
it until they were done, and like there's no winning. But
Not on that
this is
argument, no.
something that is so much more important for them to deal with internally
Oh yeah.
than getting patch 9.1.5 out in a more timely fashion. Like I don't care. Like it's fine.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, like, from like a personal perspective, like take all the time you want. I mean, I'll joke. I will sure in about 4 to 5 months as we
Yeah.
get close to maybe the next patch, I'm gonna joke about the fact that it's taking forever. But it's gonna be based on the fact that it's just the way the game is. Like
Yeah.
understanding this event and this is where it is now. Like take all the time you need. Like it's much harder. Like it's sorry, not that it's much harder, but it's much more important that like individuals feel okay, feel safe, feel like at least I don't know, like feel okay, I guess, to work at Blizzard, right? Versus like
Yeah.
making sure 9.2 gets out, whenever the next deadline is. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I think I just don't. This generally sucks for a lot of people who number one were involved in this directly, right, and have to basically relive this if they've been able to get out of it or to get over it, right?
Yes.
Kind of opens up new wounds, and I think the other side of it, it sucks for people who have nothing to do with this, right? Who are just like good workers, work on a team like at Blizzard, maybe that has never seen this, right? Because they've been insulated or
Yeah.
they're away from like this group, right? That sort of may have started this.
one
So
one of the things in larger companies, like people talk about a good manager is someone that one of the things they do is they shield you from corporate politics. So it
yeah,
is entirely feasible that there are teams on this game that didn't have to deal with this bullshit because they had good managers that protected them from it and didn't let those people on their team.
yeah,
um and like we are both outsiders here. Neither of us have worked at Blizzard. We might know people that work at Blizzard, but at the same time, it's a very narrow window into the goings on inside the company. So a
right.
lot of what we can do is just guess, and I don't think
It's
uh,
not worth it.
we're not going to spend time guessing here, but I do think it is worth saying like the team is very large. The WoW team is composed of a lot of people, and
Right.
um while it is clear, like crystal clear from everything that's been said and the contents of this report, that the problems are widespread and endemic to the company, that doesn't like vilify literally every person in the building.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I hope that I mean, yeah, I think we just need to give Blizzard time, figure out what they want to do from here, and then I mean, to be fair, it's up to the employees, right? Like it's up to the employees to really drive for what they want. And as players, as people on the outside, the only thing we can do is be understanding, I guess, going through this, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, so yeah. I don't know how to segue off of this. I'll be completely
I don't think there's a good segue off that. So that's our that's where that is. I'm
Yeah,
sure that it will be brought up again on this podcast as the situation progresses.
yeah,
Um, but for now, we're gonna leave it at that. Um, I guess there's one more thing I want to say, and that is that there's a lot of people that are like just unsubbed and like just stop supporting the company, stop supporting the game.
yeah,
WoW is a very strange game in that it's very, very highly organized, or the community is. And if I, like, as an example, if I quit the game, I would be impacting 30 something other people, um, between my guild and the other people at Peak that, are reliant on the things that I do. And it isn't clear to me that that is the correct,
right,
like, way to deal with this problem. Um, I do think that if things progress and it's clear that nothing has changed, then that becomes the correct response. Absolutely. Um, but I don't think that right now, um, it's correct for me to like stop doing this podcast, stop
yeah,
rating, and just throw all of that away because it's not even like there's another game that I can take, my raid team and go, okay, we're gonna go and play, this other game now because there's nothing else that does, 20-player content like this.
right,
It would effectively mean the dissolution of the rating team, the rating guild that I'm in, if we
yeah,
decided to do that. And if it does reach that point, then it will be something that we do take time to think about. And if Blizzard doesn't address that problem, that's something that will probably happen.
yeah,
But um, I, I do believe that there are people in Blizzard as a company that are good and are trying to do good and are going to work to fix these problems. And if they can fix it, then they should be rewarded for that.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, and I think similarly to like the people who call for Blizzard employees to quit and to leave their job are also sort of in a similar like they're in a different position, right? Like unless you're there, unless you're going through it, right? It's not as simple as just quitting your job.
Yeah,
Right. Like nothing's ever as simple, no matter what happens in a company you work for or who
yeah,
you work for, what you do. Quitting what you're doing is never an easy, yep, quit and I'll be fine tomorrow. There's always a lot more that goes on to that. So like the decision to stop playing or paying Blizzard money or playing Blizzard games or sort of it being associated with Blizzard as a company and sort of your consumerism, that's your decision, right?
yeah,
I don't think you should hate anyone or do any like say anything negative about people who choose one way or the other.
yeah,
Similarly, like from an employee perspective, it's their decision, right?
yeah. And I mean,
And
like, if I were a solo player right now, then I would unsub without a second thought.
yeah,
And then the situation would be if Blizzard turned things around and dealt with their problems and kicked out the people that are the source of these this misogyny, these complaints, then I would resub because even if I'm not playing retail, I would be playing Burning Crusade. But um, because of what that would mean for my communities, like I think it is correct for me to kind of flip the script and say, you know, we're sticking things out for now and going to watch what happens. And if things do not improve in noticeable ways, then that is the time to pull the plug.
yeah, yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. So, um, all right. Well, that is in terms of the Blizzard and the lawsuit and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
That is our take, right, wrong, or indifferent. It's sort of our point. So I guess we can sort of now shift into, I guess, the normal episode, which is we'll sort of start with our week in review. I think today we're gonna. Last week we sort of did a pretty good roundup of the Mythic race, but I think we did skip
we
Sylvanas.
didn't. Sylvanas was not dead yet. By
Yeah,
the
so it wasn't dead
time
yet. We're
that we had our show, they had started working on her because the three bosses before her were jokes,
true.
at least for
Yeah.
the world first skills. Probably won't be for us, but at least for the world first
So
guilds. So a couple of things. Before we even get into that, one of the things we talked about last week was the Kel'Thuzad cheese, where they had the DPS players with the Fate Scribe trinket haunt and die.
Mhm.
and that despawned the tank ads. That's been fixed.
Yep.
Of the cheeses that we saw last week, that is the only one. Well, there's that one, and there's a hotfix to Guardian of the first ones. It was supposed to prevent solo tanking it, which Slootbag of
Yep.
BDGG solo tanked it as a protection paladin. So I owe Lincoln from Hammer of Wrath like lunch or something for getting that one super wrong.
Yeah.
And they dramatically increase the damage that Obliterate does if you take it twice. Um, Apparently, it's still possible to solo tank it. Sloot posted on Twitter that you can still solo tank it. It just requires more externals and
Yeah.
specific externals. I think it was like you need holy paladins for it basically to do it. Um, but yeah, those are the only things that were changed. Fate Scribe still functions the same.
Yeah.
They didn't change the KT push timer shenanigans, so you can still wait sub 5% for cooldowns. Um, but that doesn't mean that they weren't fixing other cheesy shenanigans, because let's talk
Yeah.
about Sylvanas.
Uh, yeah. So I guess they did a couple of things. I guess well, okay. Do you want to jump right into Sylvanas? Or you want to do some of the other
Uh,
stuff for last week? We can jump right into Sylvanas if you want. That's
let's do
fine.
Sylvanas, and then we'll do the other stuff from last week, and then we'll do the rest of the show.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Yeah, so with Sylvanas, they did a couple of hot fixes as teams were pulling it. I think the best one was so with Sylvanas in the Mythic phase, right? This is sort of the split strategy where you end up having to split your raid into two groups in phase two, because there's now two pathways to go. There are
Yep.
two sets of ads on each pathway that you'll have to kill. And so you sort of have to run around that way. What Echo found out was that the second set of ads. There is one big ad that you need to engage on one side of the platform, but you don't actually need to kill it for her to push to the next phase. So their idea was essentially to just off tank that one ad with Now on his blood DK, and send 19 other people to the one pathway, kill all the ads, get the next bridge to spawn, then get Sylvanas to become active and try and kill Sylvanas with 19 people. Essentially trying to increase their DPS, giving them more time
Yep. And
with
they
damage
did
on her.
this because the they found out on Mythic, Sylvanas dies at 45%, not 50% like on Heroic,
Right.
which means they have to do basically 20% more damage in phase 3.
Yes, which is a large amount of damage,
It's a
which at the
lot.
time they were struggling to just hit right around 50 as platform 4 was dying. So this is basically their way of getting around sort of, or sorry, finding more DPS in earlier phases, particularly phase 2, where they could, so that she is lower. Excuse me. Going to the final phase 3, you basically have more time to kill her. So, um but yeah, I mean that was sort of a funny. We get to we rarely get to see in fight hot fixes being applied.
Yeah,
Um,
so the hotfix
but
basically made it so that they had to kill the ad or it would enrage and wipe the raid.
exactly.
And so basically, when pull their strategy worked, they got through phase 3. They were getting pretty deep. They wiped. They come back. They do it again, and then the ad just enrages and just murders everything.
Yeah, yeah. Because the other part of the ad is that if there's no one actually actively tanking it, it just does like a zone wide AOE. So
Right.
like,
And now
yeah, once
basically it does that if it doesn't die in a certain amount of time as well.
yeah. Yeah, so that was sort of the big thing. It's funny. I don't remember another time where Blizzard has done a sort of like raid wipe thing like that since Thok in
Is
Siege of
off.
Orgrimmar.
Is off.
Did he
If
do it in his
you
office?
so do you remember the limit strat of just not going into the mythic phase?
Yes, I do.
So
So,
originally it just did the same like pulses that happen throughout the normal part of the fight. And so
uh-huh.
they were just healing through it and just like doing damage on the Zoth and not doing the mythic phase.
Gotcha.
Um and so they made it do like quintuple damage or something after you're supposed to go into the mythic phase until the mythic
Gotcha.
phase ad dies.
Gotcha. Okay, okay, okay. So they did
So
do it like that.
yeah,
Yeah, the Thok example might just be the first one that I remember where like you see the video of like, if you don't remember the Thok fight, there was a very similar type of idea where you had to run him to a cage and he would eat a specific ad. And then he like went into like this enraged phase where you had to like damage him, and he took, I don't know if he took extra damage, but you could damage him. Um, and then you'd have to transition him out of that phase, and he would basically fixate one person and run around the room. So the idea was, if you keep him stationary, you do a bunch more damage. And what Method at the time, which was the guild doing it, found out that is you could literally just heal through the AoE damage phase. It hit like every 3 or 4 seconds. It silenced everybody. So as long as you had enough raid cooldowns over the course of like to hit everything, eventually the amount of damage capped out. So what Blizzard ended up doing, which is pretty funny, is they basically made like hot fix it in the middle of the fight, made one hit, just basically one shot everybody, and then they uncapped the amount of stacks that you could take. So like, yeah. So it was another similar like in the middle of the raid, just killed everybody and like
Yeah.
hot fixed it and went from there. So
Yep.
but yes, that was the Sylvanas piece. And then what were did they do any other in fight hot fixes to her last week? I know they did
So
a
there
couple
was
like quality of life
that.
things.
They what else did they hotfix? I think the other thing was not actually a hotfix. It was just the percent health change.
Yeah.
That kind of feels like bullshit. It's like, okay, if you want the boss to have more health on Mythic, give it more health. Don't change the
Yeah.
percent at which it dies. It's like having Denathrius die at negative 5% health would have been bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's basically what they did on Sylvanas, and they did it because, as far as I can tell, they wanted the phase 3 damage check to be higher. But
Right.
you can do that in ways that are not as like just pulling the rug out from under people by, for example, having phase 3 start at a higher percent, you know, which would possibly have the side effect of just making the first 2 phases shorter. Please.
That's what, I mean, that's what I was thinking too. Is they could have just like the phase 1 transition could have been higher, right?
Yeah.
Like instead of doing it at 84, could have transitioned to 86 or something like
Yeah.
that, and that way, or whatever, 87, and that way you get the extra percentage in phase 3 inherently through
Yeah,
like having less
exactly.
time in phase 1, her being higher going through phase 2 and phase 3. So yeah, I mean, it's sort of a crappy way to do it. I think somebody had data mined that she had a different aura on Mythic, like one that was like minus 50 and another one that was minus 45, but Mythic only. So sort of people knew. And then, I mean, of course, Echo, the first time they got her under 50, and they were
Got to
all
like
cheering, like, yeah, we're going to kill it.
48.7% or
We're
something
going to
like
kill
that.
it. Yeah. And then you see Roger's face. I don't know if you saw the meme, but Roger's face,
Yes.
like, where like, he's just like, what's going on? Not dead. I don't get it. Yeah. So there was a couple of good memes about that, but,
Yeah.
um,
Echo, for the
particular,
record, I don't think we mentioned it yet. Echo did get the kill.
they
Echo
did
got the
first
world first kill Monday night,
for reset.
and before the reset. So they went from like barely making it to 50% on like Saturday, and then on Monday night, where like they made it to 45% exactly at Enrage. It was amazing. And so that extra 5% basically came from not splits, because they had already done splits, a mix of Mythic Plus gear and optimizing their damage in phase 1 and phase 2, so that they started phase 3 at a lower percentage, basically.
Right. And to
So
be
that was
fair,
really cool to see.
yeah, and to be fair, perfect play. They
No
didn't lose
deaths.
a single person. They did 0 deaths on their first kill, which is, I think
Insane.
that is always going to be like, to me, that's the difference between Echo and Limit in
Yeah.
terms of like the strengths of their guild, right? Is that I think Echo is an execution powerhouse. Like as
Yeah,
soon
they
as
really showed it this year.
yeah, like as soon as they zoom in and they're like, this is the strat we want to do, this is how we want to execute this, and we just need everybody to play perfectly. There's not like, well, if you mess up this one time, if you only do it like 1% of the time right, we're not going to do it. It's like, no, you will make that like 1% check. Like you will do this
Every
like
time.
hard, crazy thing every time. And I think that's sort of on display, like just by the way they put that together. So, I
And
mean, yeah,
this
Echo,
was also a very close race, because Limit had polls Monday where they
yeah,
were reaching sub 46%,
yeah,
if I remember correctly. Like this was something where on Monday we had no idea if it was going to be a Limit kill. They got really close. If Echo was going to
mhm,
be able to kill it before reset, or if Limit was going to, like, there was definitely talk that Limit might not extend, or might not reclear. They might extend and then do a
Mm,
heroic split to get people their last domination sockets, because they were
yeah,
such a huge DPS boost that they could, get the last 0.4% they needed or whatever from
yeah,
those without needing to reclear Mythic. They did end up reclearing because Echo got the kill anyway, and Method wasn't close enough. So they got world second. But this was a very, very close race. I do think
yeah,
it is good for the races long term that Limit doesn't win 3 times in a row.
yeah.
But yeah, this was a very, very cool
It was
race.
fun to watch. It was fun to watch
Super,
the back and forth too.
yeah, yeah, super, super. Like this was a page turner of a race.
Yeah.
No idea what was going to happen next. Everything was a shocker. You know,
Particularly after Painsmith, right? Because I think
yeah. After Painsmith,
Painsmith
I
was
was like, this is gonna be like a 3 week long race because this is where Painsmith is tuned. How long is it gonna take? Like, is Guardian gonna be Sludge Fist 3.0, and there's gonna skip Sludge Fist 2.0 and go straight to 3.0, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly.
And then it died in like 7 pulls.
Well, yeah, and then and it was funny too how like I feel like for Echo benefited greatly, I think, this tier from Limit getting to bosses first because like
Yes.
again, with Echo being so good execution wise, like I feel like they're the type of guild that watches another guild kill something and says we can do that, and then within 3 pulls does it.
Yeah.
Right. And you can look at that from like their Kel'Thuzad pulls till first kill, which was super low compared to Limit, just because Limit spent, I think, a majority of the day trying to figure out exactly what they could do.
Well,
Um,
so the way KT actually went down, if I am understanding things correctly, because I didn't get to watch it, is that Limit was doing it one way. Then Echo came in and had this cheese strat for KT. Um,
yeah.
because basically Echo had reached KT first, but it was the end of their raid day, so they just went to bed. And then Limit was progressing on it, and Echo came in and did this super cheesy strat, and then Limit took that strat and killed it within a few pulls.
Yeah.
And it's like another thing from this race is it really, really, really highlighted the impact that streaming has on the race.
Oh yeah. Well, it's
Um,
like Fate Scribe, I think, is the perfect example of
yeah,
that, where like Limit kills it and Echo wakes up pissed because a similar thing happened. They got to Echo gets the Fate Scribe at the end of their raid night.
yeah. Oh, is that what it
Uh,
was? Fate
well,
Scribe, not.
but it actually happened with both KT
Oh,
and
okay.
Fate Scribe, yeah. But Fate Scribe, I think, is the better example maybe here, is because Echo gets to its end of their raid night, maybe does a few off stream polls, nothing too crazy, and then Limit wakes up, kills it with their like just go left strat,
Yeah,
and like Echo wakes up and sees how Limit killed it, and is tweeting like this, like we had like the greatest strat ever, like no, we're just all gonna go left, and they kill it within like what 13 or 14 polls. So
yeah,
I
yeah,
think I think streaming itself, the only downside of streaming, which I think it might have been Sko that mentioned this, or Kana, somebody from Method actually, like the current Method, basically mentioned like it's the only upsetting part is that now we don't get to see like the boss kill videos with different strats from the top guilds.
right.
Because like before you'd see like I think the big the most interesting, not most interesting, but the one that always sticks out in my mind is the Maiden strat
Mhm.
from Tome, where like Method did this crazy like rotate the entire raid around in melee range to like do the soaking weird or whatever, and then like every other guild just like yellow on one side, green on the other side, just crossover when you change colors. Like there's not it's not that hard type of thing. So I think you miss out on sort of stuff like that. But
Yeah,
no, it's definitely. I think this is the first time where it was like, man, like like streaming your race really helps your competitors, right?
yeah,
And at the same time, you can pull a lot from what your competitors are doing in terms of like information and things like that. So
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. Um, yeah. I had another comment to make, and I forgot what. Oh, the Fate Scribe always go left strat works on heroic. Highly recommended. Like, there's the weak
yes,
aura that people have that like assigns backups and things. Screw that. The only time you need a backup is if someone's dead, or in phase 3 when there's like 2 runes out and you got to do it in 15 seconds or 20 seconds or whatever it is. You do need to
yeah,
go right sometimes then, but in the intermission phases, just go left. Just go get in your rune, go left.
yeah, one
We
person,
did the
yeah,
backups the first week, and it took us like a while to get heroic fate scribe down. It was really frustrating, because people were trying to call backups for things that really didn't need backups.
yeah,
Even
yeah,
with without the knowledge that you could just always go left. But you have an extra 5 seconds on heroic even, so just like
Yeah.
getting your rune and go left, it's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So it makes it so much easier.
It's so easier.
But yeah, so I guess sort of I guess the other piece of this would be like how did you think the Sylvanas fight went, at least on Mythic? Because like I think going in, and I guess where my question comes from is more of like going in. I think we were both maybe a little bit down on Sylvanas coming out of
Yeah,
Heroic Week, just based on like, hey, it's long. Phase two, boring. Phase three, while interesting, is 8 minutes into the fight, so you have 8 minutes of like boringness to get through before you get to maybe the most interesting part. So, I guess now having seen maybe at least one mythic kill, maybe a couple mythic kills from a couple different guilds, is your opinion still the same? Any different opinion there?
I think the Mythic Sylvanas fight is noticeably better than the heroic one.
Okay.
Um, for a couple of reasons. One is there's simply more going on in phase one.
Yeah.
You've got the tank ads that spawn from the Wailing Arrow. You've got the chains all like spawning clustered so that more than just literally your boomkin can do things to them effectively. Um, and the Rive in the intermission at the end of the phase is way more involved than just like shooting daggers down the middle. Um,
Yeah.
so there's just way more going on there, and I think that really significantly improves it. Phase two is also shorter because it's actually the same number of platforms as it is on heroic, but you're split into two and doing two at the same time the whole way until you reach the end.
Yeah.
So that improves it. And then also like the damage you do to Sylvanas really matters on mythic version of the fight during phase two. So you do want to
Mhm.
push her as low as you can before you push out of the phase to make your phase three damage check easier.
Yeah.
So like there's these like I think there's a lot of small things that make it a lot better as a fight on mythic that I am not dreading it as much. I am still dreading it a little bit because it's got the Jaina movement nonsense going on.
Yeah.
Where like Jaina in BOD was really annoying to move as a tank because she had ranged autos and would just kind of sit there. You can move Sylvanas in phase two and phase three. She plants wherever the hell she wants in phase one, but in phase two and phase three, like you can move her and you do need to move her sometimes, and it's really annoying.
Yeah.
So I'm not looking forward to that, but the rest of the fight looks okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. I think that the differences. I mean, phase one, I think is still going to end up generally being boring. It's funny
Yeah.
how like the quality of life stuff in phase one, I wish was
In
phase one mythic. I
heroic.
wish was in heroic, like the clustered arrows and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think that would be helpful. But phase two, I mean, phase two will be I think it'll be definitely much more fun just to sort of split the raid and that type of thing. So I think it'll end up being a good fight. I still am not looking forward to it on my Mistweaver, but that's
Yeah.
just because every debuff on that fight is dispelled by revival, and
Oh
it's the
no.
dumbest thing ever. It's the and it's like the type of debuffs you don't want to dispel, like the phase two. What are they? Crushing dread,
Crushing doubt
maybe,
or whatever it
or
is.
crush it? Yeah. So that'll be dispelled by revival, which means if you hit it, it just duplicates, even if you don't want to dispel it just yet. So it's more healing overall. And then the puddle debuffs, when you touch a puddle in phase three, are also dispelled by revival, which means like if the entire rate is low, but my tank is collecting puddles somewhere, can't hit revival because
Yeah.
then I dispel the tank as he runs over the raid or she runs over the raid to drop the puddles, and I dispel them in the middle of the raid, and then everybody has debuffs. Then Fury goes off, and then my raid wipes,
Yeah.
like I did on our heroic kill or our heroic attempt this week, one of them. So and then there's a clip of me just freaking out because I'm like, this is the dumbest thing. Like, it is literally. Sorry, I'm gonna be on a slight rant here, but it's literally phase three of Botanist from Nighthold all over again. Where like I couldn't use revival in that phase because if you dispel the tank debuff, everyone just dies,
Yeah.
and revival dispelled the tank debuff. So it's just like, what? Why? Why do Blizzard like number one? Why does revival have a dispel component? It's cool. Just remove it. Or any raid debuff, just make it not be affected by revival. Like
I mean, they've done
the
that repeatedly, like remove debuffs. Like Il'gynoth is a good example where
yeah,
revival they removed the dispel on it because if you pressed revival basically ever, it would just kill
kill the
your
raid.
raid, even on heroic.
Yeah. Yeah, so they did it there. They've done it for other debuffs, right? And like normally it's for like minor debuffs. Like the revival used to
Does revival
dispel
dispel malevolence on Ner'zhul?
no, it doesn't. It doesn't. No, it doesn't. Which is like, hello, you've done it in raid. Like it used to dispel the dot from council, right? So
Yeah.
if you let a caster on council, it would dispel that, which was nice if you missed a kick. And so it's nice for like minor debuffs like that. It's just like the major ones, like, dude, come on,
Yeah.
dudes. Like, ugh. Any precision dispel should not be like revival should not dispel. And they're generally pretty consistent. It just happens to be on Sylvanas. You can dispel both debuffs. Also, fun fact, at least from my limited testing, Mistweavers are the only healers targeted by Wailing Arrow. I don't know why, but I literally got it on our kill, our heroic kill. I got the out of the 3 Wailing Arrow casts we got, I think I got 2 of the 3 on my
Nice.
Mistweaver. And like somebody was watching me, he's like, "Did you just get Wailing Arrow?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Do other healers get that?" He's like, "No one in my like not like shamans don't, paladins don't, disc priests don't, which are the only 3 healers that actually heal things nowadays. Don't know about druids, but like I'm assuming they don't get targeted. Yeah, Mistweaver does, which
I
is
feel like healers do get Wailing Arrow. It's just like very uncommon. And like
maybe it's
there's
just uncommon, but
it kind of like on Inerva last year where like they made it so that healers were less likely to get targeted by mechanics because it was just like super feels bad when you had your
yeah.
healers get targeted back to back to back by mechanics and people just died to the rot because one of your 2 healers on the fight was targeted by mechanics repeatedly.
Yeah, yeah. So it's just yeah, maybe it's just bad luck on my part, but maybe I'm overreacting on that. But yeah, it's just the dispel thing though is just annoying. So, but in any
Yeah.
event, sorry. Now that I'm off my soapbox about Mistweaver stuff, no, I think the fight's good. I think the mythic version of the fight has some potential. I am excited to progress on it and kill it
I'm
for
a lot
sure. So
more excited about Sylvanas than Painsmith.
yeah, I am actually to be fair.
Painsmith is a fight that I think if we all had perfect internet, Painsmith would be fine. But we do not, and we are going to lose many polls. People being desynced from the spikes and dying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We've talked about. There's a DK in my guild that I'm almost positive is gonna
Yep.
just die from desync. So
Yep.
and not of his fault, just his internet or for whatever reason his connection to the game is
Yep.
just off. So
So,
uh,
we are 45 minutes in. I guess we should get through the rest of the weekend review stuff before
yeah,
talking about more
yeah,
of the raid.
we can do that. We can do that. So so a couple things that have happened. So a couple of hot fixes. They put in some hot fixes on the 22nd, which was late that's or at least midweek. Basically now Horde players will get the title the famed Bane of the Banshee Queen for being in the Hall of Fame for killing Sylvanas. So I guess
It
initially that
notably
did
not
not work.
famed Slayer.
Yeah, famed Bane. So unfortunately, she does not die. But yeah, so they've sort of done a quick hotfix there. They did a couple of different hotfixes too. In
Including some
terms of some other
undocumented ones.
yeah, yeah, which we'll talk about in a second. So that's sort of like the higher ones. And then some undocumented hotfixes they've done have been the nerfs to weapons, particularly in Necrotic Wake. So the Necrotic Wake weapons have been nerfed. You may notice or you may have seen previously some clips, some video of what was it? Windwalkers were able to, or was it Windwalkers or rogues? I forget who were able to do a lot of damage with these weapons.
Both, actually.
Yeah,
So rogues were able to do it by choosing guaranteed crits from using weapons while in stealth, and Windwalkers were able to basically have Bone Dust Brew out and then use a weapon, and then just like you throw a spear into a pack with Bone Dust Brew on it, and do bajillions of extra damage because some of them proc Bone Dust Brew. They fixed
yeah,
that. Bone Dust Brew no longer procs on effects that don't come from the monk himself or herself, which is really annoying for Brewmaster, as I discussed previously, because it means that it no longer affects trinkets and other procs that make up currently 45% of my damage. Pretty nice. Um, and so what they have done is they took all of the weapons that do damage, and also the Kyrian bonus from using the golems throughout the instance, and they nerfed them by 50%.
oh Jesus, okay.
Yep,
I didn't realize it was that big. I saw the headline. I didn't actually look at the number.
50%.
Wow, wow, that's crazy.
Um, so this kind of sucks because Necrotic Wake was doable in large part, or I'll say some of the bosses in Necrotic Wake are acceptable because weapons let you trivialize them.
Yeah,
But now, like, a Marth and the final boss are going to be nightmares.
Oh
The
yeah,
final boss in particular, pet peeve, you can't dodge his auto attacks.
I didn't realize that.
It's great. Literally can't dodge them. Love it. But you can use weapons on him to make it the fight much shorter. But now the fight lasts longer, and yeah, I don't know. I'm not looking forward to this. But I also don't do that many keys, so I'm like basically just going to continue avoiding Necrotic Wake now.
Gotcha.
People
Yeah, it's not
people have
good.
been trying to drag me into Necrotic Wake because it's like it's fine, it's fine, it's been nerfed, the weapons are good, and now the weapons are half as good, and I'm like, you know what, maybe I won't go into Necrotic Wake.
Oh man, yeah, no, yeah. The weapons themselves were a lot of fun, but yeah, it sucks that they have been nerfed at this point. So unfortunate. But yeah, they did. That's I don't think they've made a post about it. Just some players have noticed that they just do considerably less damage. So
Yep.
um, but yeah, that's one piece. Next up has been sort of two sort of back-to-back updates here around the new socket items. So if you reach tier 6 or rank 6, or whatever they call it, with the new Arcanist rep, which essentially exalted, you get the ability to purchase sockets to put on season 2 gear. So the first piece of news on this is that you cannot add sockets to any of the Sanctum of Domination socketed gear. Essentially, you can't have both a domination socket and a normal socket on the same item. So one bummer. This is different from the PTR, at least according to Wowhead. In PTR, you were able to
Yep.
socket domination socket items. So you'd have both a domination socket and a typical like prismatic socket.
We didn't have a lot
Um,
of opportunities to test those for the record,
yeah.
just because there was not very much time where you could get domination socketed gear on PTR.
hmm
But yeah, yep. It worked on PTR. It does not work now. That does mean that the Clothes, I think 5 of their domination socket pieces are in slots where you could put gems, so they only get like 1 gem.
They get okay, Emil. They get 3 gems.
They get 3 gems. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
they get three
three of
gems.
the 6. Yeah, so
3
they
of the
get they
6.
get half the amount of gems, which it sucks. But I mean, we all play leather, and we actually make out the best. I think ours numbers are we get 5 of the 6, so the
Yeah,
only overlap we have is in helm. Um, mail and plate have helm plus a different overlap.
they get
So
4.
yeah, they get 4 each. So yeah, but I mean, this sucks. Like this is just I mean, while the stats provided are minor, I think at the end of the day, it's just sort of it's a feels bad moment, right?
Yeah.
In terms of like the way it's implemented, right? I think at the end of the day it doesn't swing anything wildly left or right, um but it
So
does sort of suck.
this kind of raises the question: if these are going to be mutually exclusive with like regular gems anyway, why not just use regular gem slots for domination sockets? Why make us get specific items? Why not, make them unique equipped 5, and then you collect your 5 gem slots however you want, and have guaranteed pieces from them. They're just guaranteed to have gem slots on them.
I would imagine it has something to do with just the technology behind how they implemented domination
But
sockets like in the game.
we had gems in Mob, legendary gems that had other effects. I don't know.
Right, but we
There's
didn't.
probably some.
Yeah,
You're probably right. There is some technical nonsense under the hood that meant they had to do things differently. But I,
I I I don't want to begin to unpack how they put together this game, right?
like, it
At the
would
end of
have
the
solved
day,
so many
but
problems because like you would have been able to just put a socket on your legendary and then put a domination gem in the socket. Like, they wouldn't have needed to add a bunch of new legendaries, make people recraft their legendaries in new slots.
oh yeah,
Um, it would have solved so many problems to just like have the raid drop guaranteed gem slots and then also let you, uh, you know, expand on those using Archivist rep. It would have actually
yeah,
been great.
yeah. I don't. Yeah, for whatever reason, Blizzard's not allowing that. So that's the one I guess downside or down thing here, right? Is where you can't add these gem punches, whatever you want to call them, to any
Yeah.
sort of domination socket pieces. The good thing though is they did actually implement a hot fix where the sockets and conduit upgrades are now account wide unlocks.
Yep.
So basically, you only need to unlock gems on one character, and then all your characters will be able to purchase them from the vendor. which is good. That was a hotfix that was in this week. I think when people actually reached rank 6 earlier in the week and started testing this, like trying to socket,
Yeah.
put sockets on different types of gear, and then also, hey, is this account wide or not? Notice that Blizzard was able to like quickly patch that in. Um, so now you only need to grind out the rep once, which I guess is
How deep
okay.
are you into the Archivist rep?
Um, I'm like what I just checked this morning. I'm like 5K into rank 4, so I like half-ish way. I think rank 4 is like 1100 rep, so
Yeah. I
I'm still a ways
am
away.
still halfway through tier 3, but I haven't done any of the non-repeatable stuff for tier 2 or tier 3, I think. So
Gotcha.
I've got a bunch of rep that I can get from that whenever I sit down and just like go collect those items.
Yeah, I mean, I did a bunch in Korthia just because I really want to do this. Is okay, I'm not an achievement person. I think they're actually kind of stupid, but I do like mounts, and the hand mount from the Korthia meta
Okay,
achievement I think
yeah,
is the coolest looking one. It's like
got you.
the darker gray blackish one. So yeah, I have spent a lot of time in Korthia. I've killed every rare at least once. I've gotten all the treasures up to the 3 that I can't get because I'm not rank 5 yet. Um, I'm slowly killing tormentors every 2 hours, just sucking my soul.
Yep.
Um, so doing that type of stuff. But yeah, no, yeah, I'm not too far. I still have a very long way to go. I don't know how people already rank 6.
Couple people in
Seems
my guild hit
ridiculous.
rank one of the people in my guild hit rank 6 before our raid on Friday, and
Holy
then
crap.
didn't actually have any items that they could put a socket on because every piece that they had that was eligible to get a socket or would have been eligible to get a socket was a um nomination slot piece.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
So that was fun. And then another person in my guild I know hit rank 6 today. So like it's
Nice.
definitely people are starting to get there. I will eventually get there, but sockets barely matter from brewmaster. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. They're not I mean, they're just a nice to have, I think, for you. Well, yeah,
yeah, and
even
I
for
I
us,
kind of
you know.
had been planning to get them through Torghast, but it turns out that getting into the adamant vaults is actually really tilting sometimes.
Really?
Sometimes you just don't get corrosive dosage. And you know what happens then? Everything sucks.
I will tell you, so I don't know how we get in. So like I do most of my tour guys runs with a buddy just because he hates it and it's like
Yeah.
he's got to get it done. So I'm like, I'll do it with you, it's fine. And so there are like whatever we want to get in there, we never do it. No matter
Yeah.
like if we're try harding, we're like boom, 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 clear. Yep, we're good. And then like it's just like great, we have to run another one just to cap knowledge this week. Let's just do it, get it over with. And all of a sudden we get like
Yeah.
5-star flawless. I'm just like, what the hell happened?
Like
Like
I had some runs last week where I got 4 corrosive dosage copies on the first floor. And I mean,
oh, you
at
just
that point you're
blast it.
just a literal god. You
Yeah,
just walk into something, you press vivify and everything dies.
yeah,
Um so obviously like I still have to play a little bit because you don't want to get hit by the traps, you don't want to die because those things all screw up your points.
yeah,
And I got to the end and I had a flawless run. 0 trap hits, 0 deaths, maxed out completion, great speed because it turns out when you literally one shot all of the packs,
yeah.
you get through it pretty quickly.
That's
It was like a
awesome.
15-minute run or something crazy like that. Um and so I got into the vaults and I wasn't even like trying. I just got lucky. And then this
Yeah,
week, neither of I got a grand total of like 2 copies of it over the 3 runs that I did.
yeah.
So
That's
I might
that's the rough
do
part.
one more solo tonight just to see if I can get a vaults in this week on my monk. But yeah,
Yeah, I'm
kind of
not.
tilting.
I can imagine. I'm not going back to Torghast anytime soon. I think I did something like 30 runs this week. 'Cause
Jesus,
I
why?
swapped covenant. I swapped covenants,
Oh,
which
and
we didn't. I
Torghast
didn't.
gives renown.
Yeah, I don't think I put that in the notes this week, but yeah, Torghast gives renown now.
Yeah,
So I swapped covenants, and a bunch of people in the Mistweaver lounge are doing also have swapped because we're now Venthyr boys because that's the thing now.
really.
Yeah, well, I guess I can talk about that a little bit.
You should because I heard a little bit about this, but I don't know.
Why? Yeah, okay. So I'll tell you my tour guide experience, and I'll talk about the sinister teaching stuff.
Okay,
But yeah, so swapped, and basically, like, you can blast 9 like, you can do level 9s, like layer 9s. You can do lower, but basically layer 9 is essentially guaranteed until 30 renown, which is what you wanna get to anyway before you do the campaign.
Yeah.
So you literally can sit in Torghast doing layer 9s in, like, 10 minutes a run, like,
Yeah.
8 to 10 minutes depending on your powers. So I did
That's actually
that
a good
literally
point because you can get
all
into
weekend.
adamant vaults on layer 9, right?
You can, which I ran like, so generally I didn't get it, which is funny because, like, I literally just ran to the end boss, killed it, ran to the next end boss, killed it,
Right, and so
because
you're
it's
not
low
getting the
enough where
completion points, yeah.
yeah, not getting completion points, getting hit. I think I died a couple times because I was, like,
Yeah.
not paying attention.
I might do a layer 9 just getting into the vaults.
Yeah, but then I did so it's funny, I did get into it, once, but it was, like, a random run where, like, I was dragging my buddy's paladin through it just because he needed some soul ash, and, like, we were just doing it, like, randomly, and we're like, we somehow 5 started. So I don't know how that scoring system works yet to me,
So,
but
Jarnos actually had a really good video on it, but there's a
oh,
bunch of
really?
really dumb bonuses that you can get, like never getting hit by a trap, 15 points, never taking an epic power, 15 points.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, I know about the epic one. I've seen that one
there's a few
before.
other ones that are kind of like that. You get a bunch of you get like 15 points if you kill the end boss in under a minute or 45 seconds or something.
Mhm.
So that's like 45 points right there. So for most classes right now, if you want to get into the vaults, you just should never take an epic power. Um,
Which
and
stinks.
I
Venthyr
mean,
ones are good. They're fun.
I've never seen the Venthyr monk powers actually.
Yeah. But yeah, so I did a bunch of those runs, and yeah. Torghast, I'm done with Torghast. I'll do my actually, to be fair, I probably will do a couple runs this week. It'll be the last week I do Torghast for a while because I'm so burnt out.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, I
I'm just
bet, I
awful.
bet.
Yeah.
I thought I
But
had it
yeah.
bad because I was doing like 6 runs a week to do 3 characters, 2 runs a week.
Oh, yeah. Sounds terrible
And I
too.
think I'm just hard dropping my warrior at this point because I'm our only monk debuff. So the only way that I get off of monk is we recruit a windwalker basically,
Or
or
Mistweaver.
like a really good mistweaver that we would always want to have in, because
You
we don't
always
want to be
have them.
forced into running a mistweaver just for the debuff.
Fair enough, fair enough.
Um, and if that happens, then I will play paladin instead because paladins do so much damage. Oh my god.
They crush, they crush. That's awesome. Yeah, so that's my Torghast experience. But yeah, so on to Venthyr Mistweaver Monk. So this is something that came about. Uh, so it came to light when they announced the buffs to Sinister Teachings. They did the right before 9.1 was released.
Yep.
They did a pass on legendaries and Sinister Teachings. The way that the legendary works is it adds one adept to your sort of your mirror, so you get one extra adept, right? And then it also, while your adepts are active, which is roughly about 30 seconds, any crits you do reduce the cooldown of Fallen Order by 5. Well, if you're wearing the legendary, by 5 seconds,
Yeah.
and it can trigger. It has an ICD of 0.75 seconds, so essentially you can trigger it rounding up every second. I mean, you can get it lower, but roughly every second you can get a trigger of that 5 second reduction. And when they did that change, sort of the community, and we'll say community, I mean, like we talked about it from like a veteran, like a vet theory crafting perspective. And the idea was is like, while you could probably push the cooldown down to about a minute on Fallen Order itself, a minute Fallen Order every minute didn't seem powerful enough, right?
Yeah.
Um, so we were like, it's good. It's the legendary you'd run if you were Venthyr, but you're not going to run Venthyr because Fallen Order is not good. Yeah, we were wrong. Like, we were just wrong, right? I'll be completely honest with you. We're wrong. So number one, we were right in terms of cooldown, right? You can get Fallen Order to every minute as a Mistweaver.
Okay.
Um, the thing that we were wrong about was the actual healing that it did.
Okay.
And I think we hit on maybe a couple things are happening, right? There, so shout out to number one, a lot of the Asian players, so China in particular, are the ones where we first started seeing logs of this. Um, um, China, I think Korea maybe, or like the first set of misuse that are running Venthyr saw their logs are going blasting, right? Or at least doing very good healing with it. And then a couple more people in Germany picked it up. So the Mistweaver for a version was playing it for their Sylvanas kill. Shout out World Sixth,
Okay.
number one
Yeah.
Mistweaver CE, uh, to a version in those guys. So there is potential there that this, I mean, not is potential. It shows that it does very competitive healing to the other four covenants. But it also centers around this cooldown reduction, being able to hit Fallen Order
Every
essentially
minute.
every minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there is a bug. So generally the way that the healing adepts work is they generally only cast one enveloping mist uh for the 6 or 8 seconds they're up. I forget what the actual timing is, right? So they'll cast one enveloping mist and then channel soothing mist. The bug is in certain cases they will cast a second enveloping mist at the end.
Oh.
So you get two. And I we haven't there's a bunch of talk going on right now. I have trying to keep up with this. I talked to it. I know Volk is on the case and Volk and Abby have been doing some testing. We'll probably need some more community testing for this. But we think there might actually be a haste breakpoint in that they're
Oh
affected by your
no.
haste. And that
Okay.
if you can get I think that's what they're talking about. Is that there might be a breakpoint where if you get a certain amount of stats, you'll get two casts off, which essentially doubles the
The healing
power,
of
right?
it, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a massive buff. So we haven't been able to correctly identify exactly why or when you get a second cast of enveloping mist, but that's sort of what's actually sort of boosting the overall power of the spell. So
Got you.
yeah, so that's why I mean I swapped. It's funny. I looked back and literally the day that this happened, the legendary change happened. I made a joke in our like vet chat or whatever, like secret chat. I don't know what you want to call it. That like I'm going bat. I'm gonna be a bat boy. Like I'm going over, and I didn't make it then because I'm kind of like I was like I'm kind of inting like everybody else was like we don't think it's gonna be that good. Fallen Order might not be that strong, so I sort of held off. But I'm gonna make this about me real quick. I was right. Like I was the first person in the world to say this. I just didn't do it. So no, I'm kidding.
Um,
Um, but
so
yeah,
after hearing about the Mistweavers being like, oh wait, this is actually good. We
yeah,
did recheck Brewmaster numbers. There is
gotcha.
no such haste breakpoint where you get double damage from Fallen Order for Brewmaster.
Yeah.
Um, so still sucks for Brewmaster. It is like a 600 DPS loss to run Venthyr over Weapons of Order or Necrolord.
Mhm.
Superior
Yeah.
Necrolord. Um, it is like substantially worse than any other Covenant for Brewmaster, so you're still definitely not running it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the key thing too for Mistweaver is it's only good because of the legendary and because of the
Yeah,
CDR. So if you can't push your cooldown reduction down to about a minute for each fallen order, like between a
yeah,
minute and a minute 10, then you're better off playing a different legendary and most notably probably a different covenant at that point.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, to be fair, like I think I said this the other day, but hats off to Blizzard to actually giving Mistweaver, and we're the only one spec, right? In all of them, but giving us 4 options that are actually viable. Like 4
You can play
covenant
any
options, sorry.
Covenant. Yeah, that's
Which is
cool.
which is cool. It also makes people who come into peak like super
Really
frustrated.
mad.
They're like, "What's the best covenant?" I'm like, "Literally pick one. Like
Yeah,
play each of them, do the campaign, test each ability. What ability you like best? Cool. I think the only hard requirement is if you like Venthyr, you have to play the Venthyr Legendary.
yeah.
It's the only requirement out of all of them.
Yeah, and like
Um,
Brewmaster, they came so close. If only the Night Fae Legendary was better, or if Nia got better Soulbind stuff from the new patch or something.
yeah,
Night Fae is so close to actually being good in raid. It's
yeah,
like a pretty distant third.
yeah.
Not so bad that you can't play it, but I personally wouldn't for cutting edge progression. Um, it's totally doable for CE, like late CE or heroic progression, and
Uh
it's
huh.
a lot better in keys. Because the AOE damage from it is great, but there's not a lot of AOE damage this tier in raids, so like it really falls off there. But yeah, it is like they came very close. Brewmaster basically has 2.5 covenants
Yeah.
that you can pick down from 3 last year. So yeah,
Yeah, it's I mean, hats off to them. If we give them props for something, it's that at least for Mistweaver, they got close. I mean they to be fair, I'll say they nailed it. Right? Like the fact that as a community we can't tell a person which one's better than another, right? Out of 4 options, I think is good. Is a good place to be. Even though there's probably some slight numerical differences between all of them, and there's probably a generally a numerical best. I think they're all close enough that like play what you want to play, man.
yeah.
I think that's the way
So
to
if
do
you want
it.
to be a
So
bat boy, you go right ahead.
heck yeah, brother. The new hotness. Um, so cool. So I was sort of a little bit off there, but yeah. I don't know if there's any other topics. I know we're sort of coming up to the end here, so we have a couple other things we want to get to. But any other topics for this week? Any other things we might not have talked about?
I think we covered most of what we have on our notes out of
Yeah.
order, but I think we
Yes.
actually covered it all. Um,
Yeah.
one thing before we head on to the lore corner, how is your progression going?
It's going well. So we are 3 of what, 10 mythic.
Yeah,
And we actually went to Ner'zhul first.
yeah,
And got old Ner'zhul down to about 30%. So basically have been essentially falling apart, sort of going to that final shatter transition.
yeah,
Um, for various reasons. I mean, like we've had tanks miss balls, which means there's more debuffs, which means like the healing
yeah.
requirement just becomes out of control.
I have
So
pro tip for any tanks that are listening to this. Kiov, from Might has a guide up on Peak now for brewmasters on that fight, and has some very, very good tips on how to make sure you hit all of the balls with suffering. It's very, very.
nice.
There's a pattern to it, and when you know the pattern, it actually simplifies it a lot.
I will send that to my tanks and see if they want to look
Yeah.
at that.
Uh.
Cool. But yeah, so we're going through that right now. Hopefully this week we get them down. Probably Tuesday. I think we have one more heroic clear in us just to get this skip right, because this will be the week the skip unlocks.
Oh,
Um,
true. Yeah.
so we have one more heroic clear in us this week just to get that skip, and then yeah, it's getting through the first three. We had a really bad time on I last week, unfortunately.
We did
Uh,
too. Did you kill it
yeah.
last week? Because we did not.
No, well, we did. So we got I and the 9 down, but it's weird. Like for us, progression wise, the 9 ended up being, I think, a little bit harder for us. But like this week, we two shot it. I think it's because people finally realized like that fight, like don't play stupid, like just
Yeah.
literally live, and the fight dies eventually. Like
Yeah.
it might be like a
We
9 minute fight,
overhealed it.
but
We
like
like six healed it and
yeah,
just like had one healer whose entire job was to drop Spirit Link Totem and do dispels.
gotcha, gotcha. Yeah,
Um,
so I mean, so yeah, so yeah, we had a little bit of trouble on the 9. We got it down, but yeah, that's ouch. You didn't so you can get so I guess your week didn't go as well as
so
mine.
last week, um, we made some mistakes at like an officer level, setting the comp, setting the strat for the eye. And we ended up trying to do this like bastardized rendition of Echo's strat for the eye,
Gotcha.
and overcomplicated it. Didn't address the real underlying issues that were preventing us from killing it, and didn't get the kill. We had 32 wipes or something like that, and didn't get the kill. It was pretty bad. Uh, Nobody was happy about that. We came in this week and we killed it in I think 4 polls. Then we went and killed the 9 in 3 polls, and then cleared the first 9 of heroic in the remainder of our Friday raid. So tonight we're going in, we're doing Sylvanas, and then we're going on to Remnant.
Oh,
So
nice.
this week was a lot better. We made some changes. We actually grabbed one of our raiders and forced them to be an officer and help us out some more. Uh, and so things are on the up and up. But like last Sunday was extremely frustrating
Oh yeah.
for our raid team.
Yeah, those are I mean, we had a couple of those. Yeah, like we had I think our first night on the eye, because we ended up getting to it late and killing it the second night we were on it. The first night was very much like that, where I don't think like healers weren't ready, like we weren't ready with cooldowns. We had to like swap healing on each side because we do the switch strat, right?
Yeah, which
Um,
that's what the strat we're doing. But I think we're gonna change it for next week because our damage went up so much from getting domination sets that we're having to
that's
stop
awesome.
damage on the ads now.
Oh, really?
We went from like not pushing, so we weren't staying on the left side long enough or jumping
Mhm.
over using the harpoon to the right side. So that meant that the left ad was too high. We had to have people like trying to come back and cleave it when really what we needed to do was just stick around for an extra stack.
Yeah,
um, but now when we do that, we have to stop damage or the eye dies too quickly.
that's hilarious.
So we're going to be switching strats next week. We haven't ironed out the details on exactly what the change is going to be, but people getting 15% DPS boost from getting a single item because it unlocks their unholy set. It's
That's crazy.
absolutely insane. We are up to 12 unholy sets on their raid team, 2 blood sets including me.
Jesus.
So and we expect to get several more between Sylvanas tonight and then the vault on Tuesday.
Not bad.
It's such a like Max actually had a tweet about this about how
Yeah.
Sylvanas was going to be massively easier very soon because of unlocking domination sets because there's
Oh
such a
yeah.
huge power
Yeah.
gain. And I know we spent a lot of time talking about this last week about how frustrating it was the kind of have
Yeah.
versus have not. Um, I have to say I am not a fan of having 15% of my damage be blood link.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things where it's gonna feel good now. It's gonna suck when domination sockets are turned off. Uh, in
I
9.02.
mean, it's I have been getting like rank 3, rank 4 purses on everything because I have Bloodlink maxed
Yeah.
out. Which, side note for anybody listening, if you haven't upgraded any gems yet, only upgrade sets gems to your main set, or you'll be a week behind. Uh,
Yeah.
and it's not the worst thing in the world to be a week behind, but um, you want to upgrade all of your gems for your main set equally, because that's how you upgrade the set bonus to the next rank. So like you want to get all of them to rank 3 before taking any of them to rank 4, that kind of thing. We had a
Yeah.
few people that had upgraded all of their damage gems,
It's
um,
rank 5.
not to rank 5, but like
Yeah.
to a couple levels, because before we saw how the set scaled, that was the correct thing to do.
Yeah.
But now it's gonna take them an extra week to get to rank 5, which kind of sucks, but at the same time, like not the biggest deal.
Yeah.
But a lot of these fights, like the Eye and Ner'zhul and Soul Render, have damage checks that are going to be completely trivialized by combination
Oh yeah.
sets starting about this week.
And that's honestly the cool part about the raid, I think, in that actually doing more damage is makes the fights easier. Like
Yeah,
the
that
upgrades
is.
you get,
I remember
which I don't think
people complaining about that in like Nighthold and Tomb, where like getting more damage made things it
harder. 'Cause
harder,
it's
or in many cases didn't do anything to the fight difficulty or even the fight length.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you'd even see that with like almost like N'Zoth, right?
yeah,
Was noticeably not maybe not harder, but the fact that the timings changed just made things weird.
yeah,
Every time you got like enough damage, right,
yeah.
or that next damage piece. So
SLG was the same way, where the timing
yeah,
shifted around a lot depending on your damage. Yeah,
yeah. So, but yeah, no, it sounds like hopefully it sounds like you're correcting course this week. Hopefully, so it'll be a little better for
yeah.
you. Get Ner'zhul down, which will be fun.
If we get
Have
Ner'zhul
you got
down now, I would be hyped. We have 0 pulls on it, and
okay?
a lot of guilds are
It's
taking about 4 to 6 hours progressing that boss. 4 to 8 hours, probably more accurate. And
yeah,
our entire raid night is 4 hours. So by the time we get through Sylvanas, I expect we'll have like 2 to 3 hours on it.
yeah.
If we get a kill on it, that would be phenomenal. But I think it's unlikely.
Yeah, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, honestly. So it's not a bad fight. So
Yeah,
well, cool. Well, we only have about 15 minutes. Luckily, we only have I think one question, but I like this question, so I'm going to be quick about the lore corner this week. So lore corner, we generally it's supposed to be a weekly thing. I think it's been like an every other week thing here.
yeah,
So I did want to touch on just one quick lore thing, which I think is actually cool, and it'll be interesting to see how this manifests itself in the story moving forward. So I wanted to talk about quickly is just a book that is actually already out. It came out mid-July here in the US, called The Grimoire of Shadowlands and Beyond, which is essentially like a update to the Chronicles books, right? But this
yeah.
version is written from the viewpoint of the brokers, essentially. So it's like the Shadowlands version of the Chronicles. And the one interesting piece is the actual like forces. I forget what they call it, like the celestial page, right, where it talks about
The
the
cosmology chart.
yeah,
Yeah,
it talks about basically like the six different forces in World of Warcraft, right? Which are, if you don't know, it's light and shadow, order, disorder, and then life and death. And the interesting one in the Chronicles books, which has now sort of we've known has been written sort of from the point of view of the Titans, has those sort of six things very similar in sort of size and stature, versus the Brokers version of it, which death and life are much larger components of the cosmology. Um, and so like death becomes this like is like the center top piece of the picture, right?
yeah,
And then sort of life is the sort of the opposite, but just as equally as big as the bottom. And the other four forces sort of sit in smaller, like almost like ancillary positions. Um, so it's interesting in the fact that like while the brokers sort of raise death and life in terms of like their importance in their cosmology, they still look at the 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 six sort of forces similarly,
yeah,
right? which will be interesting in sort in terms of lore moving forward and story moving forward if like other groups that we encounter as players or as just a part of the story, right? Sort of take these six forces and start to view them in some different way, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, the world is now like, I don't know, a big cube, or I think somebody in chat is mentioning like, yeah, like um that like, yeah, like there's a 3D-ness or like a almost like a like, hey, take a step back, and while these are all the same viewpoint or the same thing just viewed from different lenses, right? And
So
it's where you're viewing it from.
I just want to say, like, we use a lot of advanced math in the theory crafting world.
Yeah.
If they start requiring me to bring out the topology textbooks to understand the lore, I'm quitting.
I'm so excited.
Like, if
I'm
I
so
have to
excited.
do topology and like figuring out knots and holes and shit like that to understand the order of the cosmos and WoW, I'm quitting.
It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. But so yeah, I just wanted to comment on that. I have not. I actually, gosh, this will be like the first WoW book I think I've ever bought. But I actually did buy this
Nice, nice.
just to read through it. So when I do get it, and sit down and actually get a chance to sort of read through it, I'll sort of come back with sort of my thoughts and sort of what I see. But it's, as someone who is new to the lore in general in World of Warcraft, it'll be interesting to see if they're able to make this stuff sort of tick and tie, right? They
Yeah.
sort of take this idea of similar forces or like a similar construct, just like different groups that we encounter or get exposed to, view those six things or view this sort of cosmology in a different light.
I do think there
Um,
was a lot of like pushback when they announced when they basically retconned the
yeah,
Chronicle books.
yeah,
Um, but if they really execute these like other viewpoint books well and don't retcon the whole thing, like if they're all just actually different viewpoints and they don't end up retconning everything, everything ends up being consistent, I think it'll be really cool. If they do
yeah,
end up just using that as an excuse to retcon whatever the hell they want, then I think it all falls apart. And it
yeah,
really,
yeah.
we're gonna have to see over the next couple years, which way it ends up being.
Yeah, yeah. So it'd be cool to see how the rest of the story sort of moves forward. But I just wanted to bring this up as I thought this was a cool little way that they're starting to sort of maybe have a central, like almost like God's theme, I guess you could say, right? Like almost like a mythology type theme, right? That we get to follow. So
Yeah,
be cool. So yeah, so it's just a quick little lore corner thing there on that one. So um, cool. So I guess now we get into Q&A, which is our final. I don't think we answered this question last week. I think
we
we
did
ran out of
not
time.
answer this question last week.
So we're into Q&A. As always, this is my favorite part of the show. Unfortunately, we haven't had anybody with weird names or names that are difficult for me to pronounce, so it's been kind of boring. But we have had some really good questions, which is always, I think, the better part of this. So we have basically a big question from Kate this week. So this was, she asked, or they, I don't know if Kate's a female or male. I don't know. They
They
asked this
asked.
question. I'll just they asked this question a couple weeks ago, and sorry we did not get to it sooner. But their question is, from Kate, of course, in Discord. Why is it acceptable for add-ons to present misleading information about specs, i.e., use a defensive DMB call? I would also put an example here of pawn and and the default pawn weights in terms of,
Yeah, the pawn weights
uh,
are so much worse than anything in DBM.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
I think it really depends on how you're looking at things. Because I think the DBM example is actually not a great one. Because if you're looking at it from the perspective of doing normal or heroic, like if you're doing heroic progression and that's your entire progression path, I think the DBM use of defensive calls are fine. I don't think they're
yeah,
great. It's part of the reason I switched to bigwigs back in the day, is that DBM kind of had this thing where they would tell you what to do, not what was happening. And when you start
mhm,
getting into the mythic rating scene, it's way more important to know what is happening, so that you can adapt and address what's going on. So DBM kind of being like use a defensive instead of like you have this tank buster coming up, you need to do something about it, is not as useful from my perspective. But I do think the use of defensive calls from DBM are actually fine if you're basically just a normal raider and or like a heroic raider and that's all you do. Um,
mhm,
but pawn strings I think are a way better example because the default pawn settings are garbage and
Yes.
always have been.
Yeah, I cannot remember a point in time where someone was like, "Yeah, just install Pawn and it'll tell you upgrades." It's always been like, "You can use Pawn, but make sure you like run your Sims through SimC or like pull your stat weights from some spreadsheet if you're a healer somewhere, right?"
And I mean, there was a point in time in kind of mop era where um the stats, the order of the value of stats didn't change too much. So you could pretty much know, okay, I'm always going to be crit first, and the rest of them are kind of whatever, but I want crit more than anything, and I'll put on whatever has crit on it. Pawn weights were still wrong on the like relative value of the stats, but at least if you put a large value on crit and the small values on the others, it would get you closer than Craft would
Right.
in the era before raid bots.
Yeah.
Now though, it's completely misleading. Like you should not
Yeah.
have pawn installed. If you have pawn installed, you should uninstall it. I've had people tell me, I've told that to people and they go, well, I just want like a quick glance, like whether something is maybe an upgrade. It's like it's not actually telling you whether it's an upgrade. It's
Yeah.
completely inaccurate.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, and to Kate's question, like I don't think it is acceptable, but I think the like, and I, it's the same reason I don't think like a website like Mr. Robot or Ask Mr. Robot's acceptable or something like that.
Yeah,
It's sort of they do something that I
or
think as a
Noxic.
yeah or Noxic, right? Where it's just like they anybody can put out information about anything, right? You can see that not only in a game but in your real life, right? And it's sort of up to people or individuals or other folks to call them out on it or basically to like guide the community away from it, right? Which is sort of what has happened, I think, primarily with at least for Mistweavers with like Ask Mr. Robot and Pawn, where it's like don't use those things. Like take the
Yeah,
30 seconds it takes to like use QE Live, like the tool that Volk built like for healers, right? And put your gear in, tell you what that your top gear is. It takes all of 30 seconds to do that, right? Don't
yeah,
use Pawn. Similarly, like don't use Ask Mr. Robot because like I don't even know what it's doing. Like I couldn't tell you why it's like suggesting some things. It does not make any logical sense as why it's doing it. And like the words that they put on their website do not make sense in general. So and I think that's where you have to rely on like the community or like asking more questions than just the first thing that pops up from a Google search and go with that.
yeah,
Um, and there's no way to police that, right? Like you can put out an add-on if you want. You can build a website if you want. Put it out there. It's sort of like if you can drive enough views there, you'll get enough people to view it, and it quote unquote might become fact, or
yeah,
you know what I mean, or might become the default answer. And I think you, as an individual, need to like make the determination of like, do you trust this source? Is there enough weight behind it? And as like community leaders from I think our side, it's us to say like, yep, this is trustworthy, you should use this, or this is untrustworthy, probably shouldn't use it. But at the same time, if
yeah,
you want to, you can't tell you not to.
yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So
And kind of on that note, I want to mention we've had some people asking about the Brewmaster guides this weekend because several of them are still not updated for 9.1.
mhm.
Because we have like the main guide, which is updated. We've got the Kyrian and Necrolord guide, so they're updated. The Night Fae one is not. The Venthyr one is not, and the Legendary one is not. And that was all supposed to happen like over the past couple weeks. But for one thing, Peak was down for a while when I was going to be working on it, and
Yeah.
then just generally been busy. So they'll be up. The rest of them will be updated soon. But an important element of those is they do list which patch they are written for in the guide. So if you look at them, you will see, oh, this is updated for 9.1, and then you know it's good. Or this is updated for 9.0, in which case you know it is several months out of date.
Yeah.
So just
Yeah.
an FYI. And we did get one question from chat that I wanted to touch on.
Oh yeah.
So Adore asked, what's even the point in the Adamant Vaults? Got a single conduit upgrade thingy in like 4 to 6 vaults? Just so demotivating. The drop rate there is pretty bad.
So my understanding is you only get those upgrades for your first vault.
Yeah. You have the way I understand it is you're limited to one item from the vault per week. But if you don't get it, doing another one gives you another shot at getting it. Because like I did vault
Okay.
runs last week, didn't get anything my first vault, got a conduit item from the second vault.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So I think that's how it works. But there isn't a point to doing multiple vaults in a week, and especially as we get more gear, it's going to get a lot easier to get into the vaults. So if
Yeah.
you don't mind doing a weekly Torghast run to get into the vault and take a shot at a conduit or socket item, that's fine. I think right now it really is kind of in a very strange spot because it's hard to get into during your regular runs, so you have to like do extra runs for it, and
Yep.
also the drop rate's really low. So it's not right now. It's not really free value in the way that it's going to be in a few weeks. Because in a few weeks, when you can get into it basically just by doing the thing you'd normally do, but being at 250 eye level instead of 230, then you know it's
Yeah.
going to be basically just free value. And in that case, I think it makes a lot more sense. Right now, I wouldn't stress about it too much. If you really want sockets, you should just be doing Archivist Codex rep anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. For the guaranteed ones. Yeah. That's for sure. That's for sure. Oh. Um. Well, cool. Well, I think that's all the questions and
Yep.
basically all the topics we have for this week. So that was a full show. That was highs, there were lows, there was in
Yeah.
betweens. I think we hit it
Um,
all.
and I guess as a heads up, I didn't talk with you about this before the show, and I forgot. I may not be around next weekend, so we may not have a show next weekend. I will know tomorrow.
Okay.
So pay attention to the actual text of the post that goes up with the podcast episode and like the YouTube description, that kind of thing. It'll say whether we're gonna have an episode next week or not.
Awesome.
Um,
Awesome.
but I might be moving, so might not be here. Uh,
Okay.
but uh, yeah, that is our show for today. Thank you all for listening. Um, as always, if you enjoyed this show and you want to support it and the other work that goes on over at Pico Serenity, you can do that over at our Patreon at patreon.com/Pico Serenity. And of course, that gets you access to a couple things. You get a special channel on Discord. You get access to Babylonia's D&D campaign, which I've been making a character for this weekend as well. So that's going to be fun.
Good
Uh,
time.
but if you want to support the Peak community and you don't want to or aren't able to support us through Patreon, you can also support us just by coming and participating in the Discord. You know, come hang out and help with the questions channels, hang out in the lounges, and have a good time. But that is going to be it for our show this week. Uh, so thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week.
Bye.